Okay, so coming back from the yesterday's topic, okay, we have discussed how exactly, like normally we would be doing it. I mean, like the RFC connections and other landscapes yesterday. So this is the document which I was referring to yesterday. Like what kind of the framework and what exactly and how exactly we would be doing it, all these things. So this is a document. If you can just follow this. So this is what we have maintained. I mean, like indeed the RFC connections and as well as APO release and other stuff. Like for example, if you can see this, so this is one of the settings which we required as part of your integration settings between ERP versus the EWM one. Okay, so once we have targeted this one, so definitely the integration settings between the ERP and as well as the EWM will be definitely be set up. Okay, this is the one thing which I was trying to search, which I could not find out yesterday. However, okay, so in this particular one today, as per the today's topic, we will try to talk about the topic which is of the organizational structure of the EWM one. Because yesterday we have seen how exactly we can define the RFC systems and how we can define the other stuff. But today we will be looking into the organizational structure of this particular one. Okay. Now, yeah. So this is something where we will talk about in the later part. Yeah. This is what the connections which we have discussed in the SM59 and mapping the logical systems. And logical system, as I said, this is a combination of your system ID and your client, and that's what we have seen of ES1 CLNT 400. And the business systems or whatever we are seeing it, this is what we have connected yesterday. And the distribution model, if you can remember that, yesterday we also have created using the integration model of this particular transaction. This is how we would be creating it indeed, and where we would be requiring a three different altogether seven different standard methods which we would be creating for that, like for the outbound three and inbound two, and as well as for the manufacturing one. This is what something which we have discussed. Now when we are talking about some specific organizational elements indeed, okay, so we basically talk about like something like a master data or a supply chain unit or a party entitled to dispose or maybe a owner. These are something which are related to the EWM system. However, but when we talk about a specific organizational elements, like indeed, like when we talk about this one, like this is the case, like because we are talking as an S4 embedded one. So this is the hierarchy which we have created yesterday, like a company and a plant and two different storage locations and a warehouse number which is of the ERP one and the EWM, but we have not created the EWM warehouse yet. We will try to do this in today's session and then we will completely finish off this entire organization. Now, once we have created this EWM warehouse number, however, this warehouse number can be configured with 3 or a 4-digit number, which we normally define it in the system. Okay, so now if we were clear, this is what which we were discussing yesterday. For instance, this is something where we were talking about generate the distribution model. Okay, and in this is a transaction for that, or maybe you can follow the menu path, doesn't matter, SP/OL19. And here, if you can see that this is a warehouse which we have created that. In this warehouse, we have defined these many things. Okay, Now, once we have defined this particular methods in the system, then we need to define the EWM warehouse number. So where do we generally define that? Indeed, extended warehouse management. Okay, master data, define warehouse numbers. Okay, so now we can define a warehouse. Maybe for example, what I can do is I'll just define ZWM1. Okay, all right. We have defined a warehouse in the EWM system, but how do we configure? I mean, like this is just a kind of a template which we have copied it from the 1710 or maybe from the 1001. But indeed, all the standard tables and other information, if you would like to have it copied to your existing warehouse, then you can just go to this config of cross settings, copy warehouse number customizing. So for example, like I'm just taking the reference of the 1710, which is a standard one, and I'll just put it to ZWM1. Okay. So that you can see pretty much all the standard configuration of your tables or your storage types and other information gets copied to your specific warehouse here. Okay. Yep. You can see that all is getting been copied. Yep. Perfect. So the stand now you can, because in the standard we should not delete any of the standard settings, because this is something where you copy it to your custom one and then you start doing your own customizing here. So once we have defined your EWM warehouse number, now the question is how do we link it back to this particular one? Why? Because here, if you just go back to this particular presentation, now we have linked a company to the plant, and the plant is linked to the storage locations, and the storage locations are indeed linked to our ERP warehouse numbers, but our EWM warehouse number, which was not identified. Okay, hello, means we need to have our EWM warehouse number getting linked to our ERP warehouse number. So which is the warehouse number which we have created, WM1, and this WM1 needs to assign to the warehouse number of ZWM2. So for that we have to set up a linkage between both the systems. So that is something where we would be doing here now. If you can go to this extended warehouse management, interfaces, ERP integration, okay, goods movement. And the first thing here, what we try to see here is, okay, assign warehouse numbers from logistics execution. Okay, means now what is my warehouse number indeed? It's WM1, which is my ERP warehouse number, and ZEWM1. Sorry, ZWM1. It's my bad. Okay, so that we have assigned the link between the ERP warehouse number of this particular WM1 to this EWM1. This is how we are trying to have it. And now there is something called as a business system here. What is this business system? Indeed, I'll just park it for the time being. There is a significance for that. I'll tell you that. Okay. However, once we assigned this warehouse numbers from this particular logistics execution, then what we try to do here, the goods movement, and we try to map the storage locations. What are the storage locations we have triggered? Like for example, ZWM1, my storage location is 1030, and the logical system. So what is the logical system? which you would like to do it here. So my ERP client means from my ERP system, I'm trying to assign my plant and my storage location to my warehouse. This is what we are trying to do it. Means here the WM1 storage location is 1030 and my warehouse, this is my EWM warehouse number, okay, followed by ZWM1 1040 ZWM1 002. There is a significance for this availability group, which I'll try to explain it in the later part. So just remember this error, no unique partner was found. Yes, because it is trying to search for a certain business partners. I mean, like certain organizational elements within the EWM system when we are trying to copy it. That is something which we will take it separately in the next session. But today we will try to focus on the organizational elements, like what exactly we are having it. Like, so this is what we have created so far. Fair enough. But within this EWM systems, if we always talk about the hierarchical structure within the warehouse, we will always have the warehouse number, followed by the storage types, followed by the storage sections, followed by the storage bins, and then we have something called as an activity areas. Okay. Now, what is a warehouse now? So this is something which we already knew and we understood this. This is a physical warehouse where goods we are storing. Like you can see this in the background. Yeah, this is some kind of an higher rack storage type in a warehouse where there are certain materials has been stored. Yeah, you can see there are materials with IBCs with the liquids, and there are materials with the drums which got stored here. Like you can see this here in this picture, what I'm trying to focus here, you see that we do have some IBCs and we do have some drums, and in this we do have some kind of the bags with a multiple in one pallet we have a multiple bags, and then you see there is top also we have some kind of a small drums. So this is a kind of an industry where we can see that all kind of the chemicals or something that we are getting stored. Okay, fair enough. Now if we talk about this, okay, so you can see this is another warehouse storage type where we are storing everything in one form, which is of the boxes. So this is what we are talking now. In one warehouse, okay, we end up having a single storage type or a multiple storage types depending upon the business. And each storage type would be again drilled down to a certain levels to a storage section, and within that section we'll have something have a storage bin, and the bin, this is something we'll have a quant, but ideally the quants are nothing something where we do not have it in the EWM system. This is something where we'll have it only in the WM system, the quants. So this is what the hierarchy we always need to remember. In a warehouse we have a storage types, storage sections, and the storage bins. Now what are the storage types? Okay, now the storage types are nothing but this is the physical location in your warehouse, or physical or anything or logical subdivision of a warehouse which represents a storage space or a storage facility or a storage store. Means depending upon the product attributes. Okay, each and every storage type gets differed. Means for example, this is something where we store all kind of raw materials here. Okay, and in some cases you might need to store the products in a different storage type. So that is something where each and every storage type has its own physical attributes. However, that is something defined or indicated by the role. This is something which you need to remember that, okay, in the standard customizations. Means each storage type, whatever we are trying to have it, will be having a specific role for that. Okay, means if you're having a kind of an hierarchy, yes, obviously it is a one kind of a storage type. And if you're trying to have a pallet storage, okay, like this is not a pallet but it's a different one. Like if you're trying to have the boxes, okay, that could be, this is all something where we are storing it in a hierarchy only. Maybe if you want to store it in an open, or maybe if you want to store it in some kind of a chilled storage types. So all these attributes, whatever we are talking, this is what a storage type, which is controlled with a specific role. Indeed, what is that role we are talking here? Like if you can just go back. The very first thing is the define storage type. Okay. Now, what is our warehouse number ZWM1? You can see that there is something which was already has been copied or which was already been picked up from the standard. Okay. So picking all these things. Now, in this particular one, maybe I'll take one of the one storage type, which is a kind of a high rack, for example. Okay. Now, as I said that each and every storage type has its significance, like what? A storage type role. This is what I was referring to. Means when we are trying to define a high rack storage type, all the time, please remember that we need to make sure it is a standard storage type. If you, in case if you are placing the products in the final destination bin, okay, then it should be always with a role with a blank, which is a standard storage type indeed. If not, if you are trying to create another storage types, which is of something as a staging areas, or maybe something called as a work centers, or maybe a doors, or any other things, then each and every role has its own significance here. Okay. So now, however, what we are trying to do here, for instance, I'll just copy it for my reference. So I'll put it as Y high. So this is a kind of an high rack storage type where I'll store all my raw materials. Okay. First point. So that what? So based on this particular one, maybe I'll just enlarge this one. You can see this. So this is a kind of a storage type which I have defined it in the system. Okay. With a Y HGH. Okay, later we will try to define a multiple storage types also, depending upon the business scenarios. Now, as of now, for our understanding, we will just go ahead with this. Okay, with a warehouse number with one storage type. Now, so I hope that's clear. So where you can see this, the storage types are nothing but these are grouping of a storage bins that have a similar or a physical attributes. So it could be anything. So here you can define like what kind of a products that you're trying to store it. It could be a pallet racks, as I said, maybe if you want to store the pallets, or maybe if you're working in some kind of an automobile industry, then it would be a small parts, or maybe if you want to have some kind of a work center. So anything that can be defined within this particular storage type. First thing. Now, what is the second organizational element that we are going to see here? It is a storage section. Now, the storage sections are nothing but this will be a subdivision of the storage type. Means within in any of this storage type, for instance, like for example, we can consider like okay, you can see this the entire storage type or whatever. This file is not working as expected. You can see this entire storage type, whatever we have it, this can be considered into one hierarchy or something. Okay, within this hierarchy, again, you can segregate the products depending upon the sections. Like this could be one section, and this can be into a different section, and this can be a different section. So means each and every section can be different here. Like how is that? If you see this here, you see storage section means you can segregate within the particular storage type into each, and whether it is a slow moving items or maybe into the fast moving items, means the entire place where you're storing your high rack products. Like in this particular one, I can segregate this into my slow moving sections. Okay, and this as my slow, I can tell it as this as my slow. Okay, and the same way I can just put entire my fast moving sections below this. Okay, so this I can call it as my where I'm putting my pallets or my boxes or some kind of a cans. This can be my fast moving, means within a storage type you can just have the entire kind of things. This means what I mean to say, you can segregate the sections based upon the movement of the products. That is what the storage section refers to. You can have a multiple storage sections to one storage type, that doesn't matter, but you have to organize the bins what you're trying to create it. Now after the storage section we have something called as a storage bin, and this is something where can be divided. This is what, okay, but this is something which we need to know. Bin is the location where our stock is getting stored. I mean, like an exact location. Okay, here, if you see this, okay, each and every product, whatever has been stored, like for instance, you can see this is stored in one bin. You can see this, okay, this 15, okay, and then 16, and then 12. You can see there is one label has been attached here. That is nothing but your bin identification. Means indeed each and every product will be designated to an exact location where it has to be stored. That is what the purpose of the warehouse management, whether you go ahead with EWM or WM or any other third party solutions. So in order to have a precise location to your products, okay, where you would be performing the putaways or maybe the removals or any kind of a things, each and everything. So the storage bins are nothing but this is something where we would be having the exact locations of your products which needs to be stored out. Okay, so now here what we are trying to do now in this particular one. Yeah. So again, there is something called as an activity area. This is also one of the master data. So what is an activity area? Again, in this particular bins, okay, it is again a logical subdividing of your warehouse that groups the entire storage bins into certain activities. Means here, what I can do, for example, all the four bins, like you can see 16, 15, 12, and 11 bins. Okay, this entire bins, I'll be telling into one activity area where I can only perform the put away, not any other activities. And here in this particular one, this is another bins where I have, so that what we can do is we can segregate this based on a specific activities, whether it could be a picking or a put away or a removal or whatever it is. That is something where we would be performing it. Okay, so in both the cases here, when we talk about from the WM to EWM standpoint, we do not have this concept of these activity areas. Indeed, okay, we only have the concept of the storage types, storage section, and then the storage bins followed by the quants. But quants we don't have it here. Okay, that is what we have to see about it. Now we have defined a storage type. Okay, now the same way what we can do is I'll try to have my storage section. Another important thing, sections are not mandatory for us. The very first thing, just try to understand that in the EWM system, sections are not really mandatory. Okay, but however, we will try to define that for our understanding. So what I will do, I'll just take two sections, okay, for my storage type, which is of YHGH of my hierarchy, where I'll put it as something called as WHRK, warehouse rack, okay. This is something, one thing, and ZWM1, and then I'll put another one as something as maybe okay, YHGH. Okay, I'll use another one as some kind of other section. We can put it as palette if you want. Maybe we can use the palettes over here. Okay, palettes with the backs. Okay, and this warehouse rack is something where you can have all HUs. Okay, so this is something where I have defined two different sections in my system, in my warehouse. That okay, one is to store a pallet sections with the bags, the other one is a warehouse rack where I can place anything in that particular bin. I don't mind. Okay, so these are my two different sections which we have defined it. However, once we have defined this, here we also need to create the storage bins indeed. Okay, now what is a storage bin? As we discussed, storage bins are the exact locations of the products where we are storing it, right? Now for that, how do we identify that bin structure? Why? Because here there is something called as a bin structure which we need to understand here. Each and every bin, whatever we are saying it indeed, it has been defined with a specific bin structures here. You see this? Like even in this particular thing, each and every bin will have a significant unique identification numbers. Means this particular bin, whatever we are having, this is one bin again. Okay. And this is another bin where we store the entire products. So how do we define that? Because you see here, we have RO2, RO3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's how we are defining this entire structure through an identification. Means there is some kind of an identification which we need to create that. So how do we do that? So that is something where we need to have the bin structure defined for the system for our warehouse. So if you can ZWM1, you see this? This is a template where we do have a certain naming convention that can be defined as per the business. Like this is an 18 characteristics template when we are defining a bin structure. When we compare with WM and with an EWM things, this template creation is always with a 10 characteristics. But in the EWM one, this is something where you're having it almost like 18 characteristics. And the structure. So here there is C, N, C, N, C, N, C, C, C. Means if you can see here, C stands for all the time for the constant, N stands for the numeric, okay, and we don't have an A here. In some of the templates, we can also see the A coming up. 1 second. I think that template is not defined here, but however, not a problem. I think this is something where, okay, not a problem. So now what we can do is for my warehouse ZWM1, okay. So C stands for the constant and N stands for the numeric dice here, okay. Now, what is the warehouse that we have defined there? If you can remember, it's YHGH, okay, hierarchy, right? For that hierarchy, I'll just define a numbering in such a way, okay, like this. You see this means my particular storage type, whatever has been defined, okay, it starts with the representation of my hierarchy, okay. Dot 05 dot maybe for example 01 dot 03. It ends like this. So definitely you need to use only the numbers. 1 second. Yeah, what we used with the numbers only now. How come? Yeah. So this is something where for our thing. Okay. So now this is something where the representation of the warehouse storage type, and this is the aisle, and this is the stack, and this is the level. So what does that completely refers to, this ASL? In this particular picture, if you can just recap this entirely, like you see this, aisle stands for the gap between both the aisles. Okay, means between this particular aisle and with this particular one, for example, see the gap between the both the sections here, whatever we have seen here, this is what we call it as an aisle. Okay, in each and everything. Okay, in this particular scenario, like in this one also you can see this is one aisle one, and this is the aisle two, and this is the aisle three. Okay, that's how you can represent it. Now what is a stack? Because ASL means aisle, stack, and the level. Stack is nothing but it's the complete stack of this particular one. So stack one or stack 2, something like that. Okay, this is what the stack we call it. Okay, level means level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. So how much height you would like to define the bins. Okay, so that is what the ASL representation of this particular bin structure here. Okay, so if we can scroll back here, yeah. So this is what we have. Aisle, stack, and level means we are starting with 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 3, and we are ending with 30. Okay, like if I can say that 0, 3 again. So how many aisles we are increasing it? So this is a kind of an increment that what we are trying to define to this. And now in this particular one, yes, what is a storage type we have defined? Firstly, what is the storage type we had? It's Y HGH. Oh, yeah, this is my storage type. And yes, I don't specifically maintain the sections here because as I said, sections are not mandatory for me. And there is something called as a bin type and bin access type. So what is this storage bin type? Okay, I'll just make use of the standard one, which is long bulk something is okay. Let me just use this. Bin access type is also not mandatory for us now. Okay, now in this particular one, so what did I have defined a basic template structure here? Okay, because later we will be anyhow discussing all these points. Oh, not this. There is other one. This one, sorry. So here, if you see that, we have defined the storage type, okay, for this particular one, and the bin, this much is this one. I mean, like how much, what is a bin type? Means a bin type will tell you what kind of the products that can be placed in that particular bins. Means it's not like all the products can be placed here. So that is what we are trying to define it over here. So once we have defined it, you can also define the maximum weight. How much is the maximum weight that you can place it in the bin, and the maximum volume, or the total capacities, and the maximum bin depth. Everything can be predefined over here for this particular template. Now I've just only defined the structure of this particular bin. Now, if I would like to have the template to be defined, so the transaction is /n/SEWM/LS10. That is a transaction. ZWM3. Oh, sorry, my warehouse. And we have defined our own thing, right? So this is something where we need to enter. And now, if I say this, okay, this is my bin type. And if I create the bins here, you can see the system is creating a total bins of 60. Why? Because we have defined a template in such a way, okay, this one, okay, 30, and it starts with 3 and it is ending at 4. So this is the numbers that we need to calculate how many bins it is calculating. So you can also create it from like this environment and create bins, okay, to generate, and then click on this. So once we had this bins getting created, what happened? Assignment of warehouse, no bins created. Which assignment it is looking out for? Okay, so why it is asking us? Because it is telling that we don't have an other organizational elements that was being defined. Okay, not a problem. We will come back to this and then we will define it again. So mainly what it is trying to find out. So this is what the organizational elements that we will be defining in the system. So however, I'll come back to this in the later point. But now the other organizational elements that needs to be cleared here is something which is of the business partners. Okay, means earlier this business partner transaction was originated from EWM systems only, because earlier we used to have the vendor creation or the plant, or sorry, the customer creation or anything in a different transactions. But later in the S4, it was combined and it was being maintained in a single transaction. Why? Because earlier, if you see this is how the decentralized EWM used to perform in the earlier scenarios. Whenever we used to transfer your master data, okay, from ERP to S4 HANA to this one, a customer master data or a vendor master data used to transfer this, okay, and it creates a business partners in the EWM system. Later, once merging this EWM into the S4 landscape, what they have done, they have removed this customer and vendor creation into a separate transactions, and they have maintained it in a single transaction. That is what the business partner is. Okay, and the material master, once we transfer it to the EWM, we'll call it as a product master data. Plant or the shipping points, once we transfer it to the EWM, we'll call it as a location master data. So that is what, this is all how it used to be in the earlier scenarios. But now in this particular one, we need to understand a certain concepts like a business partner, a supply chain unit, and a party entitled to dispose, and a owner. So these are the main elements that we need to make sure whether it was clear. Why? Because these business partners are the one where we used to have, as I said, your vendor and your customer master data under certain roles. When we are defining a vendor, you'll have one role, and when you're defining a customer, you'll have a separate role for that. The same way, when I'm talking about a supply chain unit, Yes, this is the first organizational element that we need to have it in the EWM system. So what is that? A supply chain unit means it is a physical or an organizational unit. It is used for the logical processes. However, a supply chain unit is nothing but, so maybe I'll just put it in a notepad for better understanding. Yeah. So our EWM, so we need to have these two things. Okay. One is the supply chain unit, and the second one would be your party entitled to dispose, and the third one would be your owner. Okay. So once we try to have the overview, I mean, like the understanding of this particular one, then it would be easy for us to make sure what exactly we are discussing on this of the EWM organizational elements. Now, what was a supply chain unit here? We normally call it as an SCU. Okay. This particular supply chain unit, whatever we have defined in the EWM system, it is more or less nothing but, for example, it is a physical location, just putting it in layman terminology. The physical location of your warehouse. That's it. Means for each and every warehouse, we would like to have a certain physical location, and it is also will function as a kind of to organize your supply chain functions. Means this supply chain unit can be created. For example, what happens? We have a plant, a manufacturing plant. Okay, for this particular one, we're talking about a manufacturing plant, okay, which we have created it as ZWM1. Okay, and this manufacturing plant is having a warehouse. Okay, could be in the same physical location, or it is maintained somewhere far away, or maybe they are hiring at a logistics service provider, or they are hiring some space from a 3PL logistics. Okay, it could be in both the scenarios. So in the first case, what happens? Okay, in this case one, when we have uh, when we have this manufacturing plant owned warehouse, okay, the same premises, then what happens? The location of the supply, the location would be the plant. Means the same location of the plant will be your warehouse location. Okay, that is a scenario. But in the case two, what I was trying to do here, okay, when we have the same kind of a manufacturing okay, plant, but you are renting a 3PL logistics. Means it is not a plant owned warehouse, but you are renting the space from other XYZ service providers. Then the location of this would be a different one. It is not a plant owned location here. So basically, a supply chain unit is nothing but it is a physical location of your warehouse. Where exactly and how exactly you're storing that. Okay. So that is what the first thing that we have it as a point. Okay. The physical location of the warehouse. once we define, and how can we define this physical location? As I said, if we are considering the case one, okay, when we have a manufacturing plant, okay, like which is of a same ZWM1, okay, then you can transfer this data to the EWM system, and that gets created a location in the EWM system. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to make use of the plant owned location. Then in this scenario, we will be using a separate role for that, which is a 1001. And in this case, there would be a different role, which is of 1008. Okay, so this is something where we would be defining in the system, the first point. Okay, now party entitled to dispose. So this is something where a party entitled to dispose is a person who has the authority to dispose the stock. Okay, means for instance, in one of the example, like in my warehouse, who has the authority to dispose my stock? Normally, because it is a plant, because the plant is a person like who is storing the stock in the warehouse, right? Now, when I would like to recall some of the products from my warehouse, or when I would like to dispose some of the products, the authority would be something where I would be having it as a plant level, which is of ZWM1 in our case. In this case, for example, when we are using a plant one, but in the case two also, when you are hiring a third party logistics service provider and you would like to see who is the party entitled to dispose, yes, even at that point, it's the plant one because he is the one of the stock of it. So that's the reason the party entitled to dispose is the something which will be always your plant. Okay, so in your organization, if you are having a multiple plans getting created, for example, you have a three plans, okay, where we are storing the stock of a three different plans in one single warehouse. Okay, then that point of time, you would be ending up having three PETDs, means which are nothing but the party entitled to disposes, because it's not the owner of a single, because you're using a single warehouse, but you're in a single warehouse, you're holding the stocks of a multiple plants. Then it would be, you would be ending up having a scenario of three party entitled to disposes. Okay, in the EWM system, we can also segregate the stocks with the help of your plant stocks. You can segregate it. If you want to put away one plant specific stock into one storage type, yes, we can also do that by using this party entitled to dispose scenario. Okay, that's a second thing. And now, when we are talking about something called as a owner, means who is this owner? Owner is something, is the owner of the warehouse. Okay, he is the owner of the warehouse. Now, in my case one, in this case, the owner of the warehouse would be all the time my plant only, because my plant is in the same location of my warehouse, and the plant is the owner. Okay, but however, in my case too, where I'm renting the warehouse godown or something, then in my case, the person, like for example, the Siva Logistics, let's take like that. Okay, the Siva Logistics, who is helping you to do your all your operations, then he would be the owner of the warehouse. So we need to have the differentiation in the organizational elements. So very first thing you need to understand the supply chain unit. Okay, what exactly the supply chain unit refers to. And the second one is your party entitled to dispose. And the third one is your owner. Okay. These are the important elements that we need to focus on at the while creating, okay, your organizational elements. Then how can we create it? Yes, you can create it manually, or you can transfer that data from your ERP. For example, in my case one scenario, what I've said, if my plant is having its own warehouse, then I'll use the same premise location. I mean, I'll trying to use the same geographical location to my warehouse. I do not need to again recreate that manually in the system. At that point, I'll transfer my data, like what data, my plant data to my EWM. How do we transfer that? That is using CFM1 transaction. Still, we do not need to use this integration model for your master data, but to transfer your plant and your shipping point, this is still required for us to transfer it. And how do we display it? What kind of a data we are creating? For example, logistics here. Oh, come on, extended warehouse management. Okay, here maintain supply chain unit. Now the transaction is something where you can see that slash and slash cmb slash scu main. This is a transaction. Like now, for example, if I would like to have my plant one, for instance, like for example, what is my plant? It is ZWM1. This is my plant. If I try to display it, supply chain does not exist because there is no data was been transferred. So how do we transfer that? This is something where we would be using this core interface method. That's what I said. Like if I take it as plant, maybe for example, PL, we can put it anything here, ZWM plant, ZWM PL, I'll just put it. And the logical system, to which system you're trying to push it, to my EWM system, okay? And the API, this is a text-free one. I'm just trying to put it as a plant, okay? What I'm trying to distribute, I'll be distributing my plant. So that's my plant of ZWM1. This is what which we have configured yesterday. Now I'll just execute this one. Yes, now you can see there is one plant which is getting here. So now I'll generate, as I said yesterday, there are two models which we always discuss. One is your integration model. The other one is your distribution model. So the integration model is something where we are looking here, generate IM. Okay, has been generated, first point. So once we have created this, then we go into the other transaction of CFM2. Okay, and this is what we have used, and it's okay. This is not that important. Execute it. Double click on this particular plant. Okay, and this is a usage, a user, and other stuff. Okay, click on this, and then click on the start. Once we have this, what is this? Queue for the current initial data transfer is deregistered. Why? Hmm. This is not the how it happens in the real time. It's taking a lot of time. Oof. Somebody's user training 12 on this date. Oh. Hmm. Hmm. I don't think it's happening. It's very slow. It's better I'll create the supply chain unit manually. It's so the systems are too slow, man. So the transaction is this is what the transaction which we would be creating it. SEO main, okay? Because when we transfer that, it automatically gets created with 1001 attribute. That's what I'm trying to get it here. If you see this, yeah, with this particular one, I'm just trying to make it like 1001. But because of that, which is not happening, so I don't think I would be doing that in that way. So what I'll do is I'll try to create it manually. Come on. So this data and all, when we transfer it, we do not need to maintain it manually because now that transfer is not happening indeed. So that's the reason I'm just maintaining it manually here. So this is my supply chain unit, which is my same kind of a plan. But however, I've created it manually. That's the reason the attribute would be 1008. So in the real time, we can also make use of 1001 if it is a planned one, or you can also use 1008. There is no difference for that. Okay. The only thing is the business attribute gets changed here, the differentiation. Once we have defined the supply chain unit for our reference, the system assign warehouse members, ZWM1, the supply chain unit, whatever we have created, the very first thing. Okay. This is something where we would be defining it here. Okay. ZWM1. However, if you see this, this supply chain unit does not have the business attribute of a warehouse, means our supply chain unit, whatever we have defined it, here it is expecting us to have the business attribute of a warehouse. So this is what I said, that supply chain unit will have a separate kind of a alternate things. Like for example here, okay, oh, it still didn't get saved or what? We just now did this right. Yeah, now the data was saved. So to our warehouse, whatever we have created one supply chain, means a physical location for a geographical location for our purpose, and we have assigned the business attribute of a warehouse to that. Now we do have something called as a business partners. That's something which we have to create, and party entitled to dispose and the custodian. So these are something which we need to make it happen. So for example, now what I'm trying to do here, so BP, which is of my business partner, in this particular one, I'll try to create what grouping we have here. Oh, there's nothing standard. Shit. Okay, I'll take one of the group here. Maybe this might help. Let me see. Hmm. This is all having the internal number ranges, huh? Okay. I don't have any. The standard one we have 0002 as an external one, but that was not present. Yeah, it is considering because I have to take that specific number range only. All right. And for this, we need to have a certain roles, which we need to have it. Okay, this is something where I have to put this one also, the roles or something. 1 second. Where is this one? Somewhere we'll have it.
Go to interaction designs,
Come on.
visualization one,
Yep. Yep. So here we would be taking up the certain roles which would be required, which is of the FLVN01. Okay. So these are the roles which we would be considering here. FLVN00. Where is that? Okay. Yep. 1 second, 1 second. Just give me a minute. Sorry. Okay. So I'll just create this one. And in this particular one, I'm just giving the reference company code and other stuff, but this is something where we are creating it for the plant vendor, which is the plant reference one. So this is my company code, which we have defined yesterday. Oh, no entries. Really strange. Okay. Hmm. I think, okay, nothing was been created in this one. Okay. This is the second role which we have to create it indeed. Okay. For this particularly, this reconciliation account is something which is mandatory now. I think we don't have any standard entries for that.